Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today we are going to be talking about 3 a.m. text messages, late night anxiety resolution, needing to get things done right now, even though the timing might not be the best timing.
Yep.
Before we do that, we are going to start with a body-based self-connection practice to connect with ourselves before we connect with each other in this podcast.
Mm-hmm. I see some really fluffy clouds outside the window right now, so I'm going to use those as inspiration. It reminded me of one of the practices that I really enjoy. But first, let's come to body with, I'm just squeezing my hands together. So you could follow along if you'd like. You can feel and notice what your anchoring point is. Mine is my butt on the seat, and I feel my hands when I squeeze them. Now, your hands are going to have a very important task during this practice. And what we're going to do is we're going to look up and imagine you see a beautiful blue sky and big white fluffy clouds. And you're going to reach up with your arms. And you're going to use your arms to toss the clouds from side to side. And just imagine you get to toss them. Maybe you toss them quickly. Maybe you toss them slowly. We're just tossing. Maybe some of them fall down a little bit lower to closer to, in front of you. Maybe you got to reach up high to reach those clouds and toss them from side to side. And then that's it. Just toss some clouds around. You can bring your hands to wherever it feels good to let your hands rest. I really like that one. I learned it or made it up. I can't remember. I think I made it up during a really hard time in life. And everything felt heavy and dark. And I remembered how happy, I don't know if you've ever been on a plane and you see that bright sun and the clouds up there. I remember how happy that made me to see that. And I thought, oh, imagine looking up, seeing the sky with beautiful white fluffy clouds. And it was such a playful idea to reach up and get to toss them around. And so that thought in itself brings a smile to my face. But further than that, when we look up, we're changing from that typical posture that we have. Typically, we're stressed out, getting things done, and we're just really looking down, maybe looking up a little bit, but definitely not taking the time to look up and see what else is there. And it changes the body posture because you're moving the arms around from side to side, and just that movement creates an ease and a flow that usually when you think about how we walk through life and do life, I don't think the energy we feel is ease and flow unless you're very intentional or very well practiced. So it's nice to just create opportunities for our body to just experience ease and flow. Mm-hmm. And then if you want to get really sciencey about it, I think there's something that's happening where you're using one arm at a time to cross what they call the midline of the body. And that helps integrate the right and left hemisphere of the brain and bring some regulation to the body. But yeah.
Bilateral movement. So we're regulating the body, we're reducing anxiety by looking up. And for me, I remember the first time you had me do this years ago, it felt so childlike and playful and creative. It inspired creative feelings within me. And I think I made some art after we did that last time.
Fun.
Yeah, it's just so neat to see where doing simple movements will bring you.
Yeah, and what I like is you said it inspired childlike kind of feel and movement. It's a childlike innocence that says, I can toss the clouds around, but when we get all serious and ridden with anxiety and feeling burnout, we just live in that logical, critical mind that says you can't toss clouds around. Right? So even just to go to that imaginative place in your mind changes your nervous system state.
Yeah, for sure. I really like also the visual of emerging out of the clouds in an airplane. Like it's such an interesting, magical feeling when you leave, like, especially if it's dark or gray or rainy down under the clouds, and then you burst through into this bright, beautiful white sunlight with fluffy clouds everywhere. What a vibe. And all of that
Mm-hmm.
is happening at the same time. It's
At the
pretty
same
neat.
time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's pretty
hmm
neat.
hmm
Ah,
So at
so
3 a.m., when you're in your dark, cloudy, under the clouds, rainy situation,
I want to get immediately to like
right?
through those clouds to the sunshine.
Yeah, the answer is definitely sending a series of irritated text messages demanding action from somebody at 3 a.m.
Totally. I mean, what made me think of this as something helpful to talk about was I remember I had an old pattern. This is like decades ago, where I would go to bed unsettled, thinking, okay, I'm fine. I don't need to, I don't need to deal with it now. Acting like things are sort of fine, but they're not really. And then I would lay in bed and just stir and stir. My mind would go and go. My partner, he'd be like fast asleep, and I'd just get madder and madder. And I think it'd be like at 3 a.m. I'd finally like nudge him to wake with like either like actively nudge him or like just toss in bed like loud enough.
Yeah, passive aggressive,
Yeah,
pretend
totally.
sleeping.
Totally. And then I remember him saying to me on more than one occasion, he's like, do we have to talk about this at 3 a.m.? And I was like, yes, we have to talk about this at 3 a.m. Of course, we have to talk about this at 3 a.m. And it really was this body urge, like the sensation of action must happen now. And like energy must come out of me. It was so uncomfortable swirling in me. I'm like, something needs to come out of me so that I can feel better. And then it was in my mind, this like, of course it needs to be now because I'm not feeling good. I don't care if you're having a wonderful sleep. I'm not feeling good, and therefore you should not either.
Yeah.
And in no place in my mind can this wait till morning or a more reasonable time to talk about it. That was my belief system at the time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling pain and I want you to feel pain too is a very familiar old concept to me.
Mm-hmm. Why do I have to sit in pain while you get to restfully sleep or like go out with your friends or whatever it is?
Yeah.
Right.
And how angry it makes me when they're restfully sleeping. I'm like, do you not know there's turmoil afoot? Wake up.
Do I have to spell it out for you?
Because I will.
So
Yeah.
the reason I wanted to talk about this is recently I had another like middle of the night, just feeling really overwhelmed situation in bed. And there was no partner next to me, but there was a partner I could have called or texted. But I did things very differently this time. And it was very naturally done very differently. And so in the morning, even though I was feeling crappy, later in the morning, I was reflecting on that of, wow, what a journey it's been to be able to shift from that belief system and that type of reactionary panic, fight or flight kind of experience of wake up, we got to talk about this now immediately, even though at the time and looking back, I knew that it wasn't in a life or death emergency. But the feeling in my body was, this is life or death. We must discuss it now and solve it now. And to see that here I am, many, many years later, I didn't get pulled to that place. I don't operate from those same beliefs anymore. And it wasn't like this active, intentional thing that I was like, well, I never want to behave like that anymore. So I'm going to practice XYZ. I think it just ended up being a byproduct of all the things that we've been practicing over the years, that I dealt with that situation so differently. It was so much more constructive for the relationship. It was so much more helpful for me to not get into a big huff, much more respectful of the other person. And I thought it might be nice to chat about that.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. The flavor internally, when my belief was that other people cause my feelings,
Mm-hmm.
was such a helpless place, right? And if you've caused these feelings, then I need you to help resolve these feelings. And any
Mm-hmm.
feelings that arise within me, I need external support with. And
Right.
actually for them to just be completely solved for me and magically removed.
Yeah.
And I remember Phil once, it's just such a natural way we have of framing things that, oh, and then that made me feel like this. And to reframe it as the feeling that arose within me was, has
Mm-hmm.
such a different internal flavor, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I can then support myself to be with these feelings that are arising. And sometimes I need help. Sometimes I need co-regulation. But much of the time, it's just more of a softer kind of a noticing and being with feeling that I could not access previously.
Mm-hmm. There's so much power in that, in language in general, but like in that phrasing that you said, the feeling that arose within me. And if like that sounds a bit, too woo woo for you, like the feeling that I noticed is, right? Maybe that feels a little more factual to use, but like it's so different than, and you made me feel, right? Um, you said other words that I wanted to highlight, which is, then I need them to help resolve the issue. And that's a very mildly gentle way of putting it. Because really, what I think you're saying is, and I need you to be different. And I need you to do things exactly as I want you to do them right now. And that's how my problem will be solved. And I
And
don't
to
care if you
undo
want to do
all the
that or
other,
not.
yeah, yeah, turn back time and fix it.
Yeah, that.
Yeah.
I'm like laughing because I'm like, oh, I have required that before. Like, I remember when someone has like really genuinely offered an apology and it was just not enough. Like, I wouldn't accept it as enough. I wanted them to turn back time and make it have not happened. And this is actually another, like, sometimes you just get moments. You do this work and you wonder, is it really working? Is it helping? Like, sometimes you don't notice shifts, right? But then sometimes you really do. And it hits you and you realize, oh, the fruits of my labor, all that practice, all that faith and practice it's coming to fruition, right? Because not that long ago, I was upset about something. I received an apology and I was like, oh, okay. It sort of feels finished. But that's weird. How can it just be finished? Aren't we supposed to go back and forth a little bit? Aren't I supposed to be in a huff and like feeling like this isn't sufficient? And now I got to make you feel worse and bad. And we got to do that a few more times before I'm like, okay, fine.
We're even.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas like before, going from that place of, no, your apology isn't enough. I need you to actually undo that thing you did and have never done it before.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
is humanly impossible. But, that's what I thought I needed.
And what about the oftentimes strenuous endeavor of trying to get on the same page? Like, I just need this person to understand things exactly the way I understand them. And that needs to happen at 3 a.m.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, it's the need of you must understand me. And I would say I even took it beyond that. You must agree with me.
Oh, yeah.
And also the other component is, and it must be now on my
Now.
timeline.
Yeah.
And you get no input.
Yeah. Because what happens if it isn't now?
Well, if it isn't now, then I got to sit and still feel terrible.
Yeah.
And you get to lay there and be peaceful in your sleep. Screw you.
Yeah.
And like,
I'm also,
yeah.
I'm thinking of, so you're describing a situation where you're physically with your partner who's blissfully
Mhm.
sleeping while you're having all this embroiled big emotion. There's also the imaginings that happen when the partner isn't there. It's 3 a.m. They're not addressing this pain that I'm obviously feeling, so it must be obvious to them too, even though we're not in the same space. Let me amplify all of these fears and concerns by imagining where they might be and what they're doing, and then sending demanding text messages in regards to that, revving the situation up.
Totally. I've done my fair share of that in other relationships where it wasn't like you're laying in bed next to me, but it's like, and sometimes it wasn't 3 a.m., but it had the urgency of it.
Yeah.
Must be, you must respond, and you must respond in the way that I like and I want and what feels good for me. And it must be immediately because I feel gross right now. And none of these situations, if I'm honest with myself, were life and death situations. They weren't even situations like that needed to be addressed in that moment. But
Yeah.
my discomfort was so big, and I had so little skills to help hold my discomfort, to learn how to regulate myself in those like uncomfortable moments. And I was very tied to, you're the person causing my discomfort and you must be the answer to it all, right? It never occurred to me, if I feel really uncomfortable, it's probably not a good idea to try to resolve together right now because I'm dysregulated. I'm probably not going to bring anything constructive to this conversation. Let me go seek out a friend who can help me co-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
And then with a more clarity of mind and a softer heart, I can come back to you and see if actually there's even anything we need to talk about, because sometimes there isn't.
Right?
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's such a powerful thing, that the talking to the friends. And this just was not available to me before we started women's group, which is like going on, 8 years, something like that. It would have been definitely, you've caused me this pain. I'm having this pain right now. I understand that you're at work and I just don't care because we need to talk about this right now. So
Mm-hmm.
timing was off. The caliber of the feelings was off and very dysregulated. And it took knowing the context of this sharing group. It was women's
Mm-hmm.
group, it was conscious relationship training. It was a group of people who were there specifically for that, volunteering and saying, yes, please call me with these things. Let us call each other. So the framework is there.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes doing some of that and having people not actually answer the phone because they're busy, they're at work, or it's 3 a.m. or whatever it is. And to know that because it doesn't have that heightened experience of being a romantic relationship, it's not something you take personally in the same way. It's not like, well, you said you'd be there for me. You owe me all the duties of love and care and attention that I wanted from my caregivers growing up. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
this is a person that I don't have a big charge with. I know they love me. I know they want to be there for me. They're probably just busy or sleeping. I'm going to call somebody else. And when you have the experience of making a few of those calls, getting the support you need, or having people not available to answer the phone, it opens up this new reality of, oh, I'm here with myself. I know there's support around that isn't available maybe in this moment. And what next? What different, what helpful thing can I do for myself in this moment?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, practicing all of that was so good. Reaching out to someone other than your partner, reaching out to multiple people, learning also when someone reached out to you. Like, I would see people's numbers call, I would know their name, I would see them calling, and I would check in. Like, old me would have been like, pick it up. Always pick it up, because
Yeah.
if someone's calling, they must need something, and slowly I learned, like, before you pick it up, just feel into, like, do you have capacity, physical capacity, emotional capacity, nervous system capacity to support someone right now? And sometimes it was no. And so sometimes I would let it go to voicemail, knowing that if it's not me, it will be somebody else. And if it's not somebody else, they're going to have the opportunity to sit with it and be in some of that discomfort and come out the other side and feel a little bit more capable and competent. Right. And I also trusted that if it was really an emergency, they would figure it out, of like who they need to call, or 911 or whatever the thing was. But it was really important to learn how to say no when someone is in need, and notice that it has nothing to do with my care and my love for them and whether I think they're worthy of care. It was that I don't have capacity right now for whatever reason, and it's okay. And I think as I grew that muscle and that set of new beliefs, when somebody else wasn't able to be there for me immediately, I was like, oh, this is just a factual situation happening.
Yeah.
It's not a personal situation, right? So that definitely helped shift long-standing old beliefs of, if you loved me, if I mattered to you, if you cared, then you would. And you could fill in the blank, then you would.
So loaded. Yeah. It really was such a frustrating question when I first encountered it. Is this an emergency?
Mm-hmm.
Is there a need to do something right now? And I remember that just stopped me in my tracks. And I was like, well, no. But it feels like an emergency,
And learning to discern between the two. Like, it can feel like an emergency, and that's fine. That's just our body letting us know, hey, I'm in a particular nervous system state. I'm needing some regulating, but knowing it's not an actual emergency is really important.
Yeah.
It was actually funny recently in a group call. We were talking about, checking in. Is it an emergency? And someone had said, like, I've gone through my life, so many points in my life feeling like I'm just jumping from crisis to crisis, helping people out in my family, with my friends. And then noticing, like, sometimes I'm like, well, it's a medium crisis, like, I better go help them. It's a medium crisis. And as this person said that, we all, I think, started laughing because we started noticing, like, what we're actually talking about. Like, what the heck is a medium crisis? It's either a crisis or it's not one. And if it's not one, then there's no urgency, right? Or the urgency isn't the same. But we laughed at that because that's what we do. We like blanket everything as this is a crisis.
Yeah.
And
if there's a whole bunch of words and stories and thoughts and fears attached to it, chances are good it's not a crisis. When there's an emergency, your bandwidth shrinks to about one byte size of data, and nothing else matters. Everything becomes quite clear, and the path is one way forward. That's pretty obvious. So good to notice. Yeah.
So I will, if it's helpful, walk us through what happened recently at 3 a.m. in the morning for me. That was different. I went to bed feeling like something was unresolved, but also knowing like it's not something that can be resolved tonight. It's just a whole bunch of unknowns. And of course, I would love to have answers to these unknowns. I think it would make me feel better. But the answers are not coming tonight. They're probably not coming next month, in the next 2 months, maybe not even the next 6 months. I don't know. Right. And that particular night, I was just feeling really sad and upset about all these unknowns. And I've really grown my capacity to be with unknowns. But this night, it just took me hard. It hit me hard. So anyways, I fell asleep. And then probably at 1 a.m., I stirred awake. And then I couldn't fall back asleep. And I was running through my mind, like, should we handle it like this? Should I do it like this? Like, what should I do? And I was going into like problem solving mode of all the 15 ways and all the, different variables that could be changed. Then I decided it was a good idea to go onto Reddit and like be like, how do people handle these situations? What do they do? And like, that's not actually a very good idea. And because what it did was it kept revving me up, right? We talked about that in previous episodes. It just kept taking me to a place of overwhelm and sadness. So now I'm like crying, reading Reddit, turned this thing into like a huge deal that I still know cannot be resolved. Like, so it was interesting navigating those two knowings of, I feel deep sadness about this. I don't know how it's going to resolve. And I was like, the part that helps soothe me is, yes, you feel really sad right now, and you probably won't think of an answer tonight, and you don't need an answer tonight. There will be no answer tonight. And that would sort of soothe me a little bit. There will be no answer tonight. And then I thought of like, in the spirit of transparency and vulnerability, I think this is so funny when we've been people who have like held things in for a long time, and then we're like, oh, people say it's good to be transparent and vulnerable. Then we take it as tell everything immediately. And I thought, should I text this person and like tell them, just report what's going on in my mind and share my emotional experience right now? And I was like, what good does that create? This person is sleeping again. I was like, I had enough connection to, it's really not an emergency. Nothing is going to be solved tonight. I know for sure that they don't have their phone on, so like they won't even be woken up by this. So it will be something that they see like 15 messages in the morning when they wake up to go to work. I was like, that's probably not a very pleasant way for someone to wake up and have to get ready in the morning and go to work. And even if they read all those messages, there's nothing they could do at that moment to change any of the things. There's no resolution to come. So what it helped me realize is this is just some discomfort I need to sit with tonight while I lay here in bed. And in the morning, I can see how I feel and choose what's next. Right?
It's so relieving just to have that bit of awareness, right? Oh, this is just some discomfort that I need to be with tonight.
Mm-hmm. And so that night I was actually sleeping in my kid's bed and he was sleeping elsewhere. And so I took a stuffed panda. I'm going to squeeze the crap out of this stuffed panda and try to fall asleep and remind myself there's nothing that will be solved and resolved tonight, and it's okay. And in the morning, I woke up and still didn't feel that great, still felt really sad. And again, I was like, well, I could just, now it's morning. Now I have every excuse to be like, it's not 3 a.m. anymore. So maybe now I could send a barrage of messages. And again, I was like, that is not really helpful because this person doesn't have the capacity. Like they're at work. Like, what do I imagine is going to happen? Like, what kind of, like, if I assess the need that I have, whether it's for just reassurance, whether it's just for sharing, like, do I actually think that person's going to be able to have capacity to offer that, even if they really wanted to? Like, will that feel fulfilling? Like, no. So this is another moment where I just need to sit with some discomfort. And I think I messaged you. I'm like, just FYI, like it's been a cry fest this morning, right? And I can talk to you about it. But it's not something I have to drop on someone when I just know already that they don't have capacity, no matter how much they wanted to meet me at that place. And to know that there will be another opportunity, there will be a better opportunity to bring this up where I can check in with someone. And this is something I think we practiced a lot of in women's group, was learning to ask for permission from someone. Hey, I really have some stuff on my mind, on my chest, and my heart. I'd love to share. Do you have space? Do you have room? Do you have capacity to hold space? And that was just the language we use. But really, it's like, would it be okay to talk to you about this? Are you open to listening? And if not now, would there be a time that feels good for you? And like, what? Asking someone permission to unload on them? Never heard of it before. Right. What do you mean? I thought that just because you care about me, you love me, you're an important person in my life, I should be able to tell you anything whenever.
Yeah.
And you should happily listen.
Right.
Yeah. And know exactly what to say. So it felt really good. I think what it made me realize is, even though I was feeling gross still because things were unresolved and I was feeling like a lot of sensation in my body that didn't feel nice, I did have a sense of pride of, oh, I've grown that muscle. I've grown that muscle to connect with more perspective, with the truth of it's not an emergency, with the ability to regulate myself, the ability to know I'm still cared for and loved, even though nobody can offer that support right in this moment, right?
Yes.
That was a belief that didn't exist a long time ago. The ability to wait with my discomfort
That's huge. Yeah.
Was very big, because that was not, it wasn't even that it wasn't possible. It just never crossed my mind that that's something that should be happening or helpful to have happen.
This is a
Everything
piece
was very
of
me, me,
programming.
me.
Me. Yeah. This is a piece of our programming that I think is really significant, at least in Western culture. And I remember vividly when I was a kid, an episode of The Cosby Show. You remember The Cosby Show?
Mm-hmm.
And Claire Huxtable, the mom, I remember her being in a snit about something, but they had a rule, and this is the bit of programming that I'll get to. They had a rule that they never go to bed mad. When we got married, we decided we would never go to bed mad. And so Claire's like, I'm not mad. And then she puts on her like eye mask and she's like angrily trying to sleep, you know? And I think that's such a subconscious key for a lot of people. We need to resolve this before we go to bed. We cannot lose consciousness while having any discomfort. And if you loved me, you would abide by that as well. And we would stay up all night talking
Mm-hmm.
about this in circles until we're both exhausted and useless the next day. Learning to be with our discomfort is a huge empowering piece that improves our relationships in every way.
Yeah, if that's the one thing, one skill you focus on growing, learning to be with your discomfort, learning to be with your disappointment, your whole life will change. Those are the two things I had to really learn, because I didn't know how to be with my own discomfort. I didn't know how to be with my own disappointment. And like my coping, I would have coping tools for it, but I didn't actually know how to be with the feeling and the sensation of it. And I think really what I see looking back, that I came out of this, growth and healing process being able to do much better, is to be able to hold the belief that we care about each other. There's something unresolved right now, and it's okay that it's unresolved. And I have trust and faith we will resolve it together.
Yeah. As opposed to the meaning making, which is, so that's one of the patterns our brains engage in, right? When we've got these feelings of discomfort, a great distraction our brains will provide us with is making this discomfort mean things. If they're not available to answer the phone right now, it means they don't love me. It means they're not the perfect person for me. It means I deserve more and better and all of these things. If we're instead turning our powerful minds towards remembering that we have this beautiful connection, this person is asleep right now. It's not helpful for me to pursue some kind of action in this moment. And I have the power to be with these feelings. I'm learning how to be with these feelings of discomfort. That's the only distraction your brain needs, and it's growing your capacity all at the same time.
Yeah. This makes me think of, because I've definitely been in both situations where I'm like, I have whether it's a great relationship or not, like sometimes you still have evidence that this is a person willing to resolve and find resolution with you. Right? Might not be as smooth as you would like, but you can tell this is a person committed to finding resolution with you. They're just unavailable in this moment or don't have capacity in this moment. Sometimes our discomfort can come because you actually don't have trust and faith based on evidence that someone will resolve with you. And that's then a very different situation, and one that's important to explore. Like, what's making it so I'm choosing to be in a relationship with someone who consistently refuses to or doesn't have capacity to resolve with me? And there can be lots of reasons why we stay in those connections, and none of them, it's not about shaming ourselves for that, but it's just becoming aware, like, what needs are met in this relationship. Maybe resolution isn't one of them, but maybe there's other needs that are being met, and those were a priority at some point in time. Maybe those are still the priority. Maybe priorities have shifted, and now you want, a need that you have is to be with someone who's willing and able to resolve with you. And that will be something important to consider. But in my situation this time around, I'm like, I do have evidence. This is someone who will resolve with me. So nothing needs to happen at 1 a.m. Right? In the past, I've been in situations where the person wasn't willing to resolve with me. I had a lot of evidence of that, but I was really avoidant of that evidence. I didn't want to see that as the reality. And so I kept trying to hang on to that relationship when that should have been a sign for me that this might not be very aligned for me. And 1 a.m., 3 a.m., considering or assuming that's usually your nighttime rest time, it's just not a good idea regardless to try to solve problems at that time. It's not the optimal solving problem time of day for most people.
Definitely not. Yeah. Good stuff. Is there anything else you want to say on this topic?
I think just to be compassionate with yourself. If you find yourself on the timeline of, oh my gosh, I'm that person who wants to like passively aggressively wake someone up at 3 a.m. to like discuss the urgency of the situation and have them make me feel better, like, don't be hard on yourself.
Mm-hmm.
It just means that you feel really scared in this moment. You feel really uncomfortable. Your nervous system is dysregulated. It might just point to, oh, there's some muscles for me to grow in those areas, and like reach out for support. See if you'll allow other people to be that source of co-regulation for you.
Yeah. Or the repository for inappropriate and untimely messages. I remember.
Oh yeah, we started that.
The vent. Yeah.
Yes, I was part of the vent. Yeah.
Yeah. We had this WhatsApp group that was specifically for, I think, sort of everyone in the group was dating. Maybe we were all like online dating, and we knew we'd have these attachment patterns, and we'd have urges to say things and ask questions that were probably not helpful, but we also wanted them out of our body, and we wanted them to be witnessed, right? There's occasions where maybe you can just journal to get the words out of your head, out of your body, but we wanted them to be seen by other non-judgmental people. So we would send messages to this vent group, and we had the previous agreement that nobody would reply to the messages, which is a great part of our body learning as well. So yeah, having a receptacle, having a vent that's helpful and appropriate and in service of you learning to be with these feelings.
Yeah, what's great about the vent was it gave us space, like you said, for it to come out, because often when we're in that space, like we feel that energy needs to move out of our body, right? And we're conditioned to think it needs to be like out of our mouth, and often like with some intensity. And sometimes that's just not helpful or not appropriate or whatever. And so the vent, because, we're in such a texting kind of place in life, was a nice place to be able to send the message that you're like, I don't actually want to send this to the person, but let me send this off into this vent chat. And what's great about the agreement to not reply is nobody gets revved up.
Yes.
You don't keep revving each other up, but yeah, like what a jerk. And yeah, he should have did this or she should have done that. And it's just a place for energy to go. Right. And I think in our program in Priming the Body for Peace, like we practice the things of how do you move that energy? Like if it's 3 a.m. and you feel that energy, yeah, that's great to know it's not an emergency, but what am I supposed to do with this uncomfortable energy in my body? And those are just things you need to practice, right? Simple tools of practicing, finding ways to allow energy to move, and then finding ways to bring a containment to the body so it can feel that settling, right? So that you can fall back into sleep, right? It does nobody any good to lay up and be awake all night long with your discomfort. So we want to find ways to help the body settle. Yeah.
Yeah.
The vent was definitely a helpful place.
It was.
And the vent, when you're like watching it happen, is really helpful too, because you're like, oh, I see that in myself. I have those moments, right? I have those moments when I'm in the everybody else is wrong, not me. Or like, if you would just do this, then we would be good.
Yeah. Totally. And it was also a wonderful representation for me of, I'm almost then in receipt, vicarious receipt of the sorts of messages that I was desiring to send to other people who I was essentially trying to control with my messages. And then I get a good dose of like, oh, if I was receiving this message personally, how would it feel? Would it be helpful?
Well, that's what I started, like, asked myself too. Like, what are the messages I want to be sending right now? If I sent them and I'm the one waking up to these messages, like, would that feel good to start my day like that? Is there another way, another like timing of receiving these where I would be more open-hearted, more available to really be present to it?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah.
Have you got
Yeah.
a closing practice in mind? Or was there something else you wanted to say?
I mean, there was something else I wanted to say, but we won't get into this, but maybe another episode, which is, what is your reaction to someone saying, there's something I want to talk to you about, and now is not a good time for it, but I know we will resolve it later. Let's look for a time. Because I know that there would have been a time in my life if someone said that to me, when someone had the wherewithal, and I would call it the emotional maturity, to say there's something present and also now is not the best time. Can we make a time for that? I would have been like, well, and we need to do it now. If you're upset about something, then we need to do it now. And then it would also be and now I need to ruin whatever was good about right now while we wait until that time comes, because there's no way I know how to enjoy myself with you, knowing that there's something we haven't spoken through and resolved. It would just been not good.
Yeah.
And like learning now that like I can trust that we're good. We're good overall. There's something that needs to be spoken about more in depth, and can I allow myself to be present with what's here now, what we get to enjoy between now and that time? Or am I just a big mess the whole way through?
Yeah.
Right. And if you are a big mess the whole way through, there's nothing wrong with that. It's just learning to be more compassionate with ourselves, learning to bring regulation to ourselves, learning to seek out reliable sources of co-regulation.
Yeah.
Right. Because someone's actually trying to be a little bit more intentional about when hard things are spoken about. That's something that I think contributes to healthy relationship. But it's really hard to do that when now we bring all of this energy of, well, it has to be now.
Yeah.
Something's bothering you. We must address it now.
Yeah. You're describing a real important underpinning of love and trust, being able to trust and notice and pause with the reality that this is a loving, caring relationship. We will get through things. I'm thinking about the response. So imagine now you've sent a barrage of messages in the night
A
that your
barrage.
partner is waking up to. And imagine for a moment that this partner isn't someone who's just been like messing with you and doesn't give a shit. And they actually just love you and feel good and trusting in the relationship. And they wake up to this barrage. It's so difficult to respond to because it speaks to distrust. You know, this person that sent me all these messages is obviously not feeling trusting and loving. How am I able to convince somebody who's in that state that I actually love them and just trust that we're good and we can work through something? You know, it's a real catch-22.
I think that's hard. Anytime someone says, how do I convince you that?
Yeah.
Like it's hard. We got to notice in what way am I not open to seeing that there's love present and care present. And like, I definitely fell into that. I had to, my attachment style, led me to actually see the moments where someone's not there for me and not really receive and feel the moments that someone is there for me. So one of the things I practiced was really watching, really collecting evidence, really feeling those moments that someone was there for me. Because my story is, you're not there for me.
Yeah.
I'm always here for you, but you're not here for me. And so I'm going to collect all the evidence that you're not here for me. And that's all I see. That's all I feel. So I had to practice that. You said something about a barrage. It made me think of something. What did I want to say about that? A barrage of messages. Oh, it was good. Let's see if we can come back. Let's see if we can stir it awake again. If someone is sending you a barrage of messages,
You're waking up to
yes, this is the thing. Okay. I used to be guilty of sending barrages of messages, sometimes late at night, sometimes during the day. But what I noticed, and I think I almost felt a little guilty that I realized this, but I didn't care enough to change my pattern, was I feel so much better now. Now I can carry on with my day, and now it's on you.
Right.
And I remember the first time I noticed that, and then a few times after that, I noticed it was a pattern. I'm like, am I just doing this to feel better? Like, this is what helps me feel better in the moment? Or am I doing it under what I'm telling myself? Oh, I'm just being transparent and vulnerable.
Yeah. Sneaky.
But yeah, that was an interesting reality to face. That helped me see a lot of things of, I just need to get energy out. I actually didn't even care what the response was.
Yeah.
I was like, I just need this out of my system, out of my head. I feel like all the things I wanted to say are out of me.
Yeah.
Right. That's what empty the bucket practices were so good for too. Right. When we do those in group.
What a great thing to notice. And then you can implement a tool like the Vent WhatsApp chat. Be like, I know I'm going to feel better if I just get all this crap out of my brain. And then you can do that. Powerful.
But I just had to come to face that, I just dumped all this crap on you. I'm smiling and feeling better and lighter. And I don't actually care that you're going to sit there and have to dig through 15 messages and probably feel really crappy. I was like, there's probably something for me to explore there.
Great. There's always something.
I have not sent a barrage of messages in a long time.
Yeah, indeed. Congratulations.
Thank you. It took a lot of practice, but it was worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you got a self-connection practice that might help us with this?
Do I have a self-connection practice? I think I'll just share what I'm doing naturally right now, which is pushing on my legs so that my feet really feel the floor. And I'm sort of shifting my weight from side to side. And now I'm wanting to lift one heel up, just alternating, lifting my heel. And now I notice my breath wants to play also. And then now I notice I want to smush my toes into the floor. So really, you could have followed along, or you could have taken the essence of that, which is just, what are you naturally pulled to do right now with your body? And then what's the next thing? And what's the next thing?
It's neat since I guess we've had a few calls in the last week, a few recording sessions and a few live calls in a workshop. And it's been since I've had this different arrangement of furniture in my living room and in my office space. And I'm noticing feedback basically, from my furniture.
Mm.
It's only been this last week that I've had the sensation every time we start a call,
Mm-hmm.
because of the way my chair is, because of my relationship to my chair in this moment. All week I've had my hands like this, and I've noticed the feeling of like I'm milking a goat or a cow because of the way I'm holding my thumb.
Yeah.
And I've kind of noticed that a few times this week. But today, with the squishing the feet into the ground, I realized that because of my chair and the orientation of my furniture, I'm not able to move my body and interact and have body connection in the ways that feels best for me. And I'm getting sidetracked by this feeling that I'm milking a cow or a goat, which is directly because of the position my body takes in relationship to this chair.
Hilarious. Okay.
So something here needs to shift, wants
Yeah.
to
Would
shift.
you like to continue to milk the goat, or do you want to smush your feet in the ground?
Yeah, I'm done. It was neat milking the goat for a while. I need a new chair. What a great,
Got
and
it.
I could put this framework on relationships too, right? I'm in
I'm done
relationship
milking this goat.
or a
I
person.
need a
Yeah,
new,
sure.
I need a new man. I'm done milking this goat. Do with that whatever you want.
Yeah. Important to notice. Such good
Mhm.
info comes from noticing.
It's true. It's
Yeah.
true.
Okay. All right. I think that's enough. I've got a cow to milk. Great. Well, thanks for being with us.
You also have this like furry thing on your chair. So like in my mind, you're really milking a goat.
It's a farm over here. Yeah. Great. Okay. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for being silly with us. And please do like, follow, and subscribe. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next time.
Bye.